Welcome back to SM Sports Radio, and it's been an eventful weekend for the both of us, and we'll just get right into it. Florida and Clemson took on each other in the Clemson Super Regional, and luckily for me, Florida ended up winning that series, although in the second game, let's just come right out and say it became an ump show. It was a very long game, went in to a bunch of extra innings, but it kind of just left a sour taste in my mouth because I loved that Florida was able to get the win, but just with all that went on, it kind of leaves a stain on it that really bums me out.
Yeah, and that's kind of what sucks about how that all went down is it was a great game by both teams, back and forth, but the problem is all of that stuff I would argue is going to be remembered, but what will also be remembered and what will probably be at the forefront of most people's minds, Clemson fans, Florida fans, college baseball fans alike, they will remember the ump show that they witnessed that Sunday afternoon into the evening in Clemson, South Carolina.
It was so bad. Let's just talk about the ejection first. Ejections. And it didn't take long, too. No. Off a little dribbler back to Jack Caglione, and then just it all kicked off from there. You were there. Why don't you tell us what went down?
Yeah, so in the, I believe, top of the second inning, yes, Nolan Naraki hit a dribbler to Jack Caglione, and he went to field the baseball, kind of pulled him into the first baseline, and heat of the moment, I didn't see much wrong with it. Nolan Naraki kind of tries to barrel through the 6'5", 245, whatever he is, Jack Caglione, and Jack Caglione shoves him back, exchanged a few words. The umpires did pretty well in separating those players. No punches thrown. Nothing that I saw that really escalated the situation. I thought it had been really de-escalated. So I'm sitting in the press box. I'm like, okay, they did a pretty good job at diffusing that situation. But then they did the first of many infamous huddles around the mound. And I just knew something bad was going to happen there for Clemson because just disregard this game. In general, across all sports, Clemson has been getting hosed. Not necessarily like in this. I'm not necessarily talking about just in this case. Clemson has been getting hosed and has been on the wrong side of a controversial call or a controversial handling of events. We're being punished for the Justin Ross fumble in 2019 that was ruled an incompletion, which I can admit in slow motion that looks like a fumble. Clemson did go on to win that game after they called it an incomplete pass. But after that, Clemson has been getting the short end of the stick from officials over and over and over again. But back to this instance. So they huddle. They get on the phone over the headset with some NCAA officials in Pittsburgh. So that's probably a great idea. Let's involve officials that are hundreds of miles away from this game, heard nothing that was discussed, saw nothing other than the camera angles that they were provided. And after 15 minutes, 15 minutes of deliberation, we're going to eject Jack Crichton, the man who was rounding third base and was deemed as leaving his position.
Which, that is the dumbest thing ever. He rounded third. The last out of the inning has already been made. The inning is over.
Correct.
Why is him leaving the baseline going back towards his own dugout? He did not go towards the Florida dugout.
Correct.
He went back towards the rest of his teammates, towards his own dugout, and then gets grabbed on the neck and shoulder by the umpire, and then as a result of that gets ejected for leaving his position. It is, even as a Florida fan, that is laughably stupid from the umpires. Why on earth is Jack Crichton getting ejected there? If you're going to eject anyone, it has to be the runner there. It has to be the runner, and then maybe you would have to correspond to that by throwing out Caglione as well.
Which they're never going to do, by the way.
They're never going to do that.
On ESPN, he's the best player in the sport. Sorry, Charlie Condon. It's Cad.
That's never going to happen. So I don't know if they're like, well, we have to eject someone. Let's eject this guy. It doesn't make any sense at all.
That's what irked me the worst is because the umpires didn't throw anyone out in the heat of the moment. So why does someone 600, 700 miles away get to throw out Jack Crichton, who, by the way, has been one of Clemson's hottest hitters of late, coming through in clutch moments, started out on the road against Charlotte, had an RBI triple to tie up the game for Clemson. He ended up scoring the winning run. We'll get back to more of the game, but just to continue to harp on the umpiring situation, that was the first thing in the game that you could tell that these umpires and the NCAA as a whole was just going to insert themselves into this game as much as they could, which is a really unfortunate thing because it was a great game in and of itself, like we've mentioned before. And number one, as a Clemson fan and a Clemson student, I thought it was awesome how Eric Bakich, say what you will, he handled all the situations in ways that Clemson baseball, the university, and its fans can be proud of. And it started in that second inning when he was pulled out of the dugout. The umpires let him know number 3 is going to be ejected. Mm-hmm. So Bakich is like, all right, you can be the one to tell him. So he's like,
I love that.
He's like, hey, yo, Jack, come here. Gets Jack Crichton, allows the umpire to point at him and do this, the classic ejection motion. Obviously, Jack Crichton, super emotional and exchanged some words, as he should, with the umpires. Going back to him, quote unquote, leaving his position, which every time you watch a runner on the base paths after the third out of the inning is made, that's the exact line that they take to the dugout. And yes, he yelled at the umpires, but other people did as well. And yes, he probably touched the umpire, but I think I would have the reaction to slap someone's hand away from me too if they pulled me like this.
Exactly, yeah.
So, and then the last thing about that instance in particular, how do you determine that Crichton left his position, but no Florida players did? Because they were all going towards the situation.
Yeah, it was. There's just a bunch of inconsistencies there that are really, really terrible. And then the thing too with the ejections later in the game of Leggett and Eric Bakich. I know that Jack Caglione obviously did the bat spike early in the game.
Correct.
And then the Canarella bat spike, when he did his, was also, he pimped that home run a little bit.
I mean, you should pimp home runs in the Super Regional.
You're allowed to. It seems great. And then to suddenly be upset about a home, I get why Leggett was really upset with that.
So let me walk you through that situation. So it is the top of the 13th inning. Somehow, by the grace of God, Clemson had not allowed Florida to score in the 9th, 10th, 11th, or 12th, which absolutely befuddled me. I went into every single one of those half innings thinking, this Florida team hits a lot of home runs. A solo home run would end the game right here.
Yeah.
For 4 straight innings. So
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, okay, all we need is one.
12 plus at-bats. I'm sitting there, my heart's pounding. And then when Clemson comes up to bat, it's more like, okay, I can breathe a little bit. I'm not actually stressed because we can't lose the game in that half inning. And then when Mathis finally broke through, obviously the place is going nuts. Mathis spikes his bat in pretty much the same manner that Cags did the day before.
Great bat spike from Mathis. It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
So Mathis is rounding third base, and an umpire looks like he wants to eject him. Another umpire steps in and is like, I don't know if you should do that just yet. Let's huddle up about it again. So huddle.
Because the game needed another stoppage.
Huddle at least number 2. There were probably some in between that I forgot about in that 5-hour experience.
Which I know you didn't have this perspective, but as someone who's watching that game on television, the ESPN crew for that game, even they were calling out the umpires like, oh, do we seriously need to have another mother's meeting, a home plate for everything going on? They were way past done with this ump crew as well.
Yeah, so Mathis steps on home plate, and the whole Clemson team is out of the dugout celebrating with them, which, as they should, just hit a go-ahead home run in the 13th inning of a Super Regional game, in a game that the Tigers are fighting for their season and a lot of them their careers. And at first, sitting in the press box, I was thinking the umpires are getting together because warnings were issued at the beginning of the game for the previous altercation. So by the book, Clemson's not supposed to come out of their dugout.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to have a lot of guys ejected there for that. Thankfully, that's not what happened. But the fact that they even huddled at all due to the bat spike, that's what really fired up Coach Leggett. And Leggett comes out of the dugout after being tossed, gets his 2-game suspension. And then I had access to a lot of camera angles being in the press box. And what actually happens next is once Leggett comes back to the dugout after being ejected, I'm pretty good at reading lips. And Bakich says, well, shoot. Didn't say shoot, by the way. Well, shoot, I guess I got to go get tossed now, too.
Yeah.
So he goes out there, gets tossed, gets a 2-game suspension, just like Leggett, fires up the crowd. And I'll tell you what, I was pretty fired up in that moment as well. Put his arms up in the air added some more cool adjectives.
At that point, I thought Florida was so cooked. The energy in that building.
I never thought that Clemson was going to win that game, other than in the bottom of the ninth inning. We'll get to this later when we discuss the actual game. We're still in the umpire theatrics, if you can believe it. 10 minutes into the show,
it's absolutely that. If that doesn't tell you what kind of a game this was, the fact that it was an amazing 13-inning game, and we're spending double-digit minutes talking about the umpires.
Last thing on the umpires. Well, a series of last things, if you will. The Crichton ejection hurts a lot more than you would think, because Clemson doesn't really have the depth that it had at the beginning of the season, losing a couple starters. And it's not like, wouldn't you agree that Florida is the more talented team than Clemson? Yes. So Clemson had these guys. Tristan McClatty had, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Tristan McClatty had 7 at-bats the entire season before he had to just get put in for Jack Crichton in that moment. And then later on, Ty Olenchuk into the game at DH for Clemson.
Zero
at-bats. Has light tower power, though. That's why he was in the game, if you were wondering there. And let's see, I'm losing my train of thought here. But yeah, umpires. Being in the press box, another luxury I had was having access to TrackMan, which, if you don't know what TrackMan is a software that basically gives you the strike zone, and it shows you exactly where the pitch landed, how fast it was, the horizontal break, the vertical break, if it's hit, the launch angle, the exit velocity, how far it went, etc. So I was able to see what was a strike and what was not. And that 3-2 strike to Olenchuk,
that was the worst call at bat of the entire game.
Was an absolutely terrible call. And
I'm pretty sure there were 6 balls thrown that at bat.
And it was another instance where the umpire had little man syndrome, and since Ty Olenchuk thought that strike 2 was a ball, which it was a strike, I'll give the umpire credit, because he walked off, tossed his bat, the umpire decided to let that carry over to the next pitch and let that penalize Clemson.
Which also it looked like he was going to call it a ball too, because he stood up. And granted, that home plate umpire was taking his time on strike calls all day.
So annoying.
But that bat especially, he stood back and I was like, well, that's a walk. Good at bat by Olenchuk. And then about 5 seconds later goes, and I'm like, what? It was one of the worst calls I've seen as far as strikes.
Enough about the umpires. Let's get into the game itself. Florida striking first in the first inning, bottom of the first. Jack Caglione was actually ahead of the changeup, way out in front, and just with the flick of the wrist, 110 exit velocity over the batter's eye, 432 feet.
He's just ridiculous, man.
Absolutely ridiculous. I had no idea why Clemson was still pitching to him at that point. I do understand situationally there, you don't want to put runners on first and second with Ashton Wilson up in that spot. You don't want Canuck to have that much traffic on the bases without Florida necessarily earning it. But Caglione made Clemson pay there. Then after the theatrics in the top of the second inning, Florida didn't score in that bottom of the second. And then coming up to the top of the third, I was actually sitting beside Joe Healy of D1 Baseball, and Clemson had a little bit of a rally cooking, and the crowd was getting into it a little more. And I said to him, if Blake Wright or Cam Canarella hits a bomb, this place is going to explode. And what do you know? Blake Wright hits a 3-run bomb to give Clemson the lead, or maybe it was a 2-run bomb. Either way, Clemson scored 3 runs in that inning to give Clemson the 3-2 lead temporarily there. Let's see what else happened. All right, I missed the Hinderleiter double in between those. So Blake Wright with the 2-run homer there. Then in the bottom of the third, another key to the game, up until the ninth, every time Clemson scored in the top half of an inning, Florida responded with a run or multiple runs in the bottom half. So in the bottom half of the third there, Colby Shelton lined a 2-out single to score the tying run there to make it 3-3. Shelton coming through again in the 5th inning with a 2-run single. And then Jimmy Obertop laced a solo home run to get the crowd back into it.
I know Canarella and Blake Wright are the 2 headline names you look at with this Clemson lineup, but there was no guy I was more terrified of coming up to the plate this series than Obertop. It felt like he hit a nuke every time he was at the plate this series.
Yeah, for sure.
He was dialed.
He had a super big series. And then in the 6th inning, Brody Done, the catcher for Florida, hits a 2-run home run to give Florida a 7-4 lead. And this is the first
effective thing he's done in a while.
And it was the first point in the game where I was like, okay, Clemson's not going to win this game. I just started mentally preparing myself, emotionally preparing myself. And to be quite honest with you, if Clemson had just never come back from that point, I don't think I would have been as crushed as I am just as to the way the game ended.
But then Cam Canarella. I call him Cade every time.
But before we get to that,
because we have Cade Kurland in the Florida lineup. I want to call everyone Cade.
Before we get to that, Tristan McClatty, who had been inserted into the game for Jack Crichton, coming through with a run-scoring single in the top of the 8th inning. Cam Canarella hitting a single right before him to score a run there. So that made it 7-6. But then Ashton Wilson responds with a 2-run home run off Austin Gordon.
Ashton Wilson might be the hottest hitter in the country right now.
He's not even the hottest hitter in his own lineup, but
I think he is. If you look at him in the Stillwater Regional, one player of the regional in that, then I know that we've had other guys playing well, but Ashton Wilson, there's a reason that a guy that barely played all year has been put into the 3-hole for the postseason. This guy has been one of the deadliest players in this Florida lineup. Obviously, you know what you're getting from Caglione in that 2-hole, but having a guy behind him like Wilson means that a lot of times when you intentionally walk Cags, he's going to get knocked in because Ashton Wilson has been swinging such a hot bat this postseason. He has been just on fire. Cannot say enough about him so far this postseason. I really hope he keeps it going in Omaha because that's a guy we really need to keep hitting with. Guys like Dale Thomas has been cold. Up until this game, Brody Donay had been ice cold. So you look at the guy like Wilson, that's really something we're going to need.
Yeah, so Wilson responding with that 2-run home run there off Austin Gordon. Austin Gordon was fabulous other than that at bat all game. He came in relief of Aiden Canuck shortly after Garris exited the game and gave Clemson five innings, only gave up that 2-run home run, just those 2 runs, had a career high 10 strikeouts, which if you've been following Clemson baseball for a while, you know that Austin Gordon was initially a starter. So he came in out of the pen and struck out more guys than he ever did as a starter. That was an incredible performance by him. I wish he had a little bit more in the tank to get us over the top, but unfortunately Clemson couldn't score in those extra innings to reward him with that performance there. And then if you've been on social media, if you've been on SportsCenter at all, just throughout the early parts of this week or the late parts of this weekend, you probably know what happened in the 9th and 10th innings.
Yeah.
Another point where I thought Clemson was kind of dead to rights. Throughout the season, I kind of had a feeling every time Cam Canarella was going to do something big. Didn't really have that feeling, to be honest with you, in the bottom of the 9th or in the top of the 9th, excuse me. It just kind of felt like Clemson was going to have one of those It's not really something that Clemson's done all season. They've had a lot of comeback wins, 25 to be exact, but it just felt like they were going to go down swinging, if that makes sense. And Canarella belts a 3-run home run
off of Brandon Neely,
whose velo was down, to be fair, just because
was pitching back-to-back
his arm was about to fall off.
Yeah,
but nonetheless, Cam Canarella cementing himself as having the most aura in Clemson baseball history, in my opinion, just as a Clemson baseball aficionado, if you will. And the place goes absolutely nuts, as it should. The problem was they went so ballistic that I think it kind of sped up the heart rates of the next hitters. And Obertop and let's see who came after Obertop there. I guess it was Bacetta. Obertop and Bacetta both striking out. So obviously the Canarella bomb was huge. The press box was even going insane, which you usually don't see that. Yeah. The press box was going insane. And then the bottom of the 10th inning, Canarella, a hero once again, with probably the best catch I've ever seen in my life.
I thought we had won the game at that point.
Everyone
of Ashton Wilson.
No, everyone in the stadium thought Florida had won the game there. And then Cam Canarella launching himself, mind you, going up that warning track hill, launches himself. The ball hits the heel of his glove. He pins it against his body.
Which, by the way, to make that play with his shoulder injury that he's playing through, how on earth do you make that play with that? And then as well, that wire fence at the bottom of the wall, I don't know how he didn't get his feet caught in that and trip. That's probably the most impressive college baseball catch I have ever seen.
If you consider the situation, the degree of difficulty, the stakes for Clemson, and just that game in general, that is the best catch in baseball history, in my opinion.
I think the original Willie Mays.
Watch the video. It is not better than that catch. Willie Mays only had 1 foot in the air. I've compared these videos several times. Willie Mays only had 1 foot in the air. Cam Cannarella was going up a hill and had both feet in the air and pinned it against his body. That is the best catch of all time in baseball history. If you consider the score, the situation, and what was at stake for Clemson. Anyway, enough debate about the catch. It was a really good catch.
I thought he had lost the ball in the air when he first started running after it, the way he was tailing across.
He definitely did lose it for a second, spun his head around, found it again. That's what cements it for me as the best catch I've ever seen. And it'll be the best catch in baseball history for me, at least for now. And then the top of the 13th, as we talked about earlier, Mathis hitting the solo home run to give Clemson a 10-9 lead. Unfortunately for Clemson fans, fortunately for Micah and Florida fans, Clemson kind of ran out of pitching at that point. Ethan Darden able to get out of a jam in the bottom of the 12th. Not quite able to finish it off in the bottom of the 13th.
Well, also the collision between Jacob Hinderleiter and
great point. The second single up the middle
that turned into a double.
Yeah. It turned into a double on that little fiasco, and then an intentional walk there set up.
Which Ashton
Michael
Wilson
Robinson.
again, that double.
Yeah.
So I maintain I think he's the hottest hitter in the country right now. But how about, let me talk about Michael Robertson for a second. This is a guy that's hitting 255 on the year, is really only in the starting lineup because he plays elite center field defense, and he has now saved the season for the Gators twice. Once in the Stillwater Regional, he made a diving catch in center, laid out to save a game that would have eliminated Florida in the regional and only game 3 of Florida's regional there, and then now the walk-off double to win the game in the Supers to send Florida to Omaha. This is a guy who most of the games cannot hit, but you put him in a clutch situation, he's been weirdly effective in this postseason so far. So shout out to Michael Robertson. I really hope he can keep this up, but it's been really encouraging to see guys at the bottom of the lineup actually producing, because that's been a real problem for Florida this year. The weaknesses have really been the bullpen, which all season was terrible. The Brandon Neely you saw today, I know you said his velo was down. That's where his velo has been most of the season, out of the pen, and he's just really ticked up in the postseason. So what you saw, Cam Cannarella's homer off him, is kind of the Brandon Neely you saw through a lot of the regular season, especially when he was being forced to start games. But this bullpen has really stepped up. Jake Clemente has been a lot better so far this season. The end of the game, McNeely coming in and pitching effectively at the end of the game. This Florida bullpen has really stepped up. The bottom of the lineup with Brody Donay hitting a home run. This is just a team that I think is really, all season, the talent was supposed to be there.
Preseason number 2.
Yeah. Preseason number 2. This is a team that I picked to win the national title at the start of the year. And midway through the season, I thought, no way that could possibly happen. The bullpen
they were one game away from not being eligible to make the tournament.
Yeah, it was crazy. And I know, as you said last week, a lot of people, even me, thought this team didn't necessarily deserve to even be in the tournament.
Which, if you're talking about, obviously the talent's there. I'll give them that. It's a very talented team. It has all the potential in the world. I still maintain that they did not deserve a bit.
Well, you look at the Ole Miss team that won the title a couple years ago. That also
postseason performance does not determine if you deserve a bit. In my opinion,
I'm not saying it does at all, but I'm saying that anything can happen.
Yeah,
in the postseason,
and especially in baseball.
Yeah, I like the way the college baseball postseason is set up, because it's not just one fluke game that sends you to Omaha for sure. And to see this team really gel and come together at the right time has been super encouraging. I think this is really where you're seeing Kevin O'Sullivan's managerial ability. He's an elite manager. Florida's now won 9 straight Super Regionals under him, which is just a ridiculous stat.
Been to 9 out of the last 14 College World Series.
Yeah, it's absolutely absurd.
I read that and I was like, oh my goodness.
This program right now, regardless of how the regular season performance was, this program is the standard for going to Omaha right now in college baseball.
Yeah. In terms of respect and standard for the program, I think they probably will not necessarily need to win another one, but the fact that you only have one in 9 of the last 14 trips is mildly concerning. But then if you remember that there are 8 teams there, it's really nothing.
And also,
okay, go ahead.
While I can, I just want to talk about Florida athletics in general for just a quick bit here. Third consecutive track and field championship this season. Then only school in the country to send a team to both the women's and men's college World Series. So stick and ball is back in a big way at Florida. Softball is still cooking right now, so it's great to see that. Hopefully Billy Napier can figure it out on the football field.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Yeah, Todd Golden has the basketball program humming right now, so Scott Strickland may be inept as an AD in my opinion.
I actually met him in the press box on Sunday.
Really?
I did, yes.
Interesting. So
last few thoughts from me about Clemson baseball and about this game. I will say that Florida, regardless of how the regular season went, they were the better team this weekend, regardless of the umpires, what have you, the pitching woes by Clemson. Florida was the better team. Florida is a top 8 team in the country right now, which deservedly so. They're in the College World Series. Hats off to them. Everything about that. Back to Clemson baseball. Final thoughts from me about Team 127 in this Clemson baseball season. What Eric Bakich has done in just year 2 of his time at the helm of this Clemson program, winning a regional or making it to a regional his first season, turning the season around after starting out 2-8 in ACC play last year. That was the first step. Then this season, despite losing 2 starters in Tony Chufo, or not Tony Chufo, that is a different guy. What's his name? Andrew Chufo, starting shortstop, and Will Taylor, who was actually drafted in the 3rd round out of high school, in left field, broke his wrist midway through the season, overcame those injuries, won a home regional for the first time since 2010, and kind of restored a belief in this program. Clemson fans have kind of been in that mindset of, well, we're a good regular season team, but when the postseason comes around, they just kind of brace for impact, prepare themselves for the choke, if you will. But for the first time in 15 years, on Sunday night, when Cam Kennarella hit that 3-run home run, they believed that they were going to succeed in the Super Regional. They believed. They didn't have doubt. They weren't bracing for a collapse. For the first time in a decade and a half, there is belief that this Clemson baseball team can get it done, and I cannot wait to see what Team 128 does, and cannot wait to see how Bakich continues to lead this program. I thought he represented Clemson very well throughout with his handling of things. You can say all you want about how he was, quote unquote, whining to the umpires. I didn't view it that way. I hope a lot of people didn't view it that way.
I thought it was completely justified. I thought it was completely
That's good to hear from you for sure.
I saw no issue. I thought he was, especially considering how bad those umpires were, I thought he showed incredible poise to make it as long as he did without being ejected. And what really stood out to me was when he told the umpire he would have to go eject that player himself.
Yeah.
Like that's a guy sticking up for his players. That's something you love to see, him firing up the crowd. I think the Clemson baseball program is in really good hands right now. And I know we always talk about in college football, when Miami's better, when Southern Cal is better, college football is better. When Clemson is good, college baseball is better. They have such a historic winning tradition. This is a team that you love to just see succeed in the postseason unless you're a South Carolina fan.
Yeah.
And I think that, honestly, you look at the progression under Eric Bakich, the logical next step next season is Omaha. If you can bring back a lot of this talent and keep going, I think that you're really set up for next year. I think Eric Bakich is doing a great job with this program. Like you said, I really think the only trajectory right now is up for these guys.
Yeah, definitely. And here's the final thing. I forgot about one thing. I did think it was a little bush league for Kevin O'Sullivan to go have the umpires check out Austin Gordon's hat.
Yeah, but you got to do what you got to do.
I can't say I agree with that at all. Kevin O'Sullivan is allegedly friends with Eric Bakich. They shared a time on the same staff. I don't think that was a move that is going to put him in the good graces of Bakich or in the good graces of the Clemson family, as we like to say. I don't think Kevin O'Sullivan is a Clemson man anymore, and more power to him because he has built his own legacy at Florida, like we've mentioned before. But I really hope that the media stops asking Bakich about his good old buddy Sully, because that's just not how it is anymore.
I don't think he made any friends, but also with how locked in he was on the mound right now, you kind of, from my perspective.
So you wait till the 5th inning that he's in?
Why
when
not?
he had the dirt on his hat the whole time.
When you know you need something.
It's Bush League.
When you know you'd I'm not saying it's not Bush League, but I'm saying when you know you need something, yeah.
I can agree it was a strategic move. It was tactical.
I can agree that it's Bush League, but I also kind of like the tactic.
Yeah, and that's fair. I'm glad that we both like our skippers. So
yes.
College baseball is super fun.
Let's talk about the actual 8 teams going to Omaha now. Let's talk about the
You don't have to phrase it like that when your team is going and mine is not.
Okay.
But yes, 30 minutes in, we can talk about the rest of college baseball.
And we're staying in the SEC and the ACC because that's the only teams that made it. 4 SEC
It just
teams.
means less, baby. Come on.
4 SEC teams, 4 ACC teams.
Just means less versus it just means more. Who will come out on top?
I don't know. We'll have to see. But how about the state of Oregon really holding it down for the rest of college baseball after Evansville got shellacked by Tennessee in that last game?
And officially the rest in peace for the Pac-12 as Oregon and Oregon State are see you later. And that conference.
R.I.P. Bill Walton. R.I.P. the Pac-12.
And it's put to rest in fitting fashion as that Kentucky-Oregon State game made it to about 12:15.
How do you not cover the home plate if you're the Oregon State pitcher?
That was the final moment of Pac-12 After Dark.
It's so
goodbye Pac-12,
honestly. But let's talk about these matchups, and let's start with the number 1 overall seed, Tennessee. A number 1 overall seed has not won it all in Omaha since 1999.
Please let this continue. Please,
this better
continue. Please.
I'll tell you right now, I'm going to be rooting for the meteor in this series between Tennessee and Florida State.
Oh, I forgot about that for you. Oh.
This is if Florida gets eliminated by A&M and then one of these two teams wins the final, I will be very disappointed. But I think Tennessee is good enough to win this, but Florida State is so hot right now that it's
James Tibbs III just mashing home runs.
This feels
every
like
game.
to flip a coin right now between these two teams. I'm super excited to watch the game just for the baseball that will be being played, although could not care less about either of these teams, to be honest.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the kind of the off the field stuff, if you will, like just the home run pimps, because they're going to be there with both of these teams.
Yeah.
And this is something I forgot to mention, going back to Florida, Clemson, and pimping, etc. How come Major League Baseball has figured out that you just let the guys pimp home runs?
Yeah, why can't
and college baseball hasn't figured it out yet?
I don't get it at all. I don't get the NCAA's aversion to fun.
And how many times this season, like, I think I can count on one hand how many times I can think of a player or coach getting ejected this season in Major League Baseball. And I can think of 3 just from one game Sunday night. Like that, get your stuff figured out, NCAA, or you are going to be your death is going to be quicker than we thought.
You want to know why college baseball the college baseball audience has been falling off a cliff? You don't let the guys have fun. Let the guys have fun. You're making the sport less and less marketable every time you do something dumb like this. It's just, how can you not see what you're doing? There's a reason where regular season college baseball has fallen completely off of television now. There's a reason why even certain postseason games and regionals are only on ESPN+. If you want this sport to have a national audience, because college baseball is one of the best sports.
And they showed this season people want to watch it. This was the most watched regional and super regional of all time.
It's such a good sport. And you're killing your audience.
People are going to be repulsed by the umpires with these 15-minute huddles. Nobody wants to watch an umpire on a headset for 15 minutes while they're trying to watch a college baseball game, for one. Number 2, nobody in the world wants a player, an 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kid getting ejected for slamming his bat in a big moment.
It's absurd.
Get your stuff figured out. Tennessee and Florida State, I hope you hit a lot of home runs and flip your bats a lot, and I hope the NCAA does nothing about it. I hope they learned a lesson. I hope the crew that umpired Clemson and Florida never gets to umpire a big-time game ever again. But
who would you take in this Florida State-Tennessee series? I'm taking Tennessee.
I'm taking Tennessee as well. I think Florida State wouldn't necessarily be a team that is screwed if they lose game 1 in Omaha.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that. They definitely have the lineup to be able to bounce back.
That lineup is just so relentless.
Then the next game here is A&M in Florida, and I'm rocking with my guys. I can't pick against Florida right now. I know A&M. Honestly, if you would ask me what team do I want to see the least, it would be A&M right now.
Same
They're
here.
just so hot. But also, I think you ask a lot of these teams, who are the two teams you want to see the least? A hot Florida's not who you
the
want to
second
see
one.
either.
Yeah,
so
that's exactly right. Florida's playing better than Tennessee right now.
they are. And I think you look at this game, this is another game where I think these top two matchups, Tennessee, Florida State, and A&M, Florida, the losers of these two games are the two teams I will feel the best about that might have a chance out of the losers bracket. But I'm going to rock with my guys. I'm going to stick with Florida here.
I'm going to go A&M, and I'm only going to go A&M because I think they're probably going to start Liam Peterson, and I don't think the freshman's ready quite yet.
No, the lights were way too bright in the Super Regional. It came out and got shelled, but hopefully, you never know. Maybe we'll just have Brandon Neely throw 137 pitches and be fine.
Yeah.
But
unfortunately, you gotta save Neely a little bit because you won't have as much wiggle room there.
I think if it was up to Neely, though, he'd throw a complete game every day. But
I agree.
It's great to see him have his mojo back because he was one of the best parts of the end of last season for Florida. Then this Virginia-UNC series, it's UNC.
It's UNC.
It's UNC
It's
all
Brandon
day.
Honeycutt. It's UNC.
I think Virginia's 2 and done in this tournament, to be honest. I think I
agree
both of their
there.
first games. And as far as this Kentucky-NC State, I keep doubting this Kentucky team. It's not going well for me. I'm gonna keep doing it anyway. I'm gonna pick NC State over
Pac-9,
Kentucky.
baby.
Yeah, I'm gonna take NC State. I think Kentucky probably win. Well, no, because they're matched up with the A&M Florida game, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah, so I think
Kentucky is the worst team in this field.
I think Kentucky might be 2 and done as well. I think them and Virginia are probably 2 and done.
Yeah, I think Kentucky, out of Kentucky, NC State, Florida, and A&M, I think Kentucky is playing the worst ball in that field. I think they're the worst team in that field despite the seeding and despite the record. I'm going to go NC State there as well.
Okay, so now who are you going to take for the winner of this year's College World Series? I'm going to be biased. I'm going to pick with my heart. I'm going to pick Florida. I think if Florida is knocked out, I would go A&M. I think those are the two best teams right now. But I am, like I said, I'm going to back my guys.
I think I'm going to go. I think this is just inevitable. I don't want this to happen. I think it's somehow going to be an all SEC final, and I think it's going to be A&M versus Tennessee, and I think A&M's going to get it done.
I don't think Tennessee makes it.
I hope they don't.
I think Tennessee wins their first game, but I don't think Tennessee makes it to the final. If you had to ask me what are the 4 teams I was most confident in making the final, I would go in order: Florida, A&M, UNC, Florida State. That would be my 4 teams I'd be most confident making it out. But
I can rock with that.
We will have to see what happens. I know we've talked a lot of college baseball today. We are going to move on now and talk about the NBA Finals a little bit, as my Mavericks prediction isn't going too well, and frankly, they're cooked.
Yeah, I think they're cooked as well. Obviously, Boston coming away with a 105-98 game 2 win to go up 2-0 in the series. And I'm sorry, Dallas Mavericks fans, Luke Fessler, if you're watching this, you just lost a game in which the Celtics shot less than 25% from 3.
Yeah.
Or they shot 25.6%, 10 for 39, but you are cooked.
No chance.
I apologize.
I will say,
I'm going to stick with my original prediction, Celtics in 5 or 6.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. I will say, I was not familiar with Kristaps Porzingis' game. I thought he was washed before this point. I was not familiar with the fact that he is still good at basketball. He has been great so far this series.
Yeah, and that game 1 performance was absolutely incredible. Coming in off the bench in the first quarter and scoring, I think, 16 or 18 points in that first quarter alone. Maybe it was 14. Mm-hmm. But anyway, coming off the bench in the second quarter as well, continuing to do the same thing. He was trending on Twitter for that crazy entertaining performance in the first and second quarter of game 1. Continued it in game 2 with 12 points, 4 rebounds and 2 blocks, plus 12 in only 23 minutes. And the thing about this Celtics team is they just are loaded with 39% three-point shooters. And Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum can drive and kick until one of them is open.
Yeah.
Derek White's knocking down shots. Sam Hauser's been knocking down shots. Peyton Pritchard knocked down a 3 off the bench after going 0 for 7 in game 1. Al Horford shooting it well from 3. Jaylen Brown's been pretty good shooting from 3 as well. Drew Holiday made 2 3-pointers in game 2, and I'm sorry if Drew Holiday makes multiple 3-pointers on your franchise. Your franchise is poverty. And Jason Tatum hasn't even scored all that much. He's been more of a facilitator, 12 assists in game 2. I don't even think the Celtics have necessarily reached their pinnacle this postseason in terms of the level at which we know they can play. Obviously, one of the most talented rosters in recent history. I think back.
This just is the best team.
Probably since the 2018 or 2019 Warriors. This Celtics team is loaded. They are going to win the NBA Finals.
Yeah. And how quickly do you think, let's say over under 2 minutes, how quickly do you think the NBA Twitter melts down after Jason Tatum inevitably poses in the Kobe pose the NBA Finals trophy?
Oh, less than 10 seconds.
That'll be entertaining to see for sure. This series, I will say, even though I don't love the Celtics, as a huge Florida Gator fan, obviously it'll be nice to see Al Horford get an NBA Finals trophy. That'll be really fun to see. But you've pretty much covered all of it. The Mavericks are cooked.
Yeah, and before the season or this series wraps up, rather, Luka Doncic is gonna will the Mavericks to at least one win in this series. I believe. I think he's gonna have one of those 45-point, 50-point games because Luka Doncic. Like him or not, I personally do not like him at all.
I don't either because he's the bane of my team.
I think he's the best player in the sport right now. And maybe if you he's the best offensive player in the sport. I was about to say,
I'll give you best offensive player.
If you consider the defensive end is still Jokic, but I think Luka's so much better than anyone else at offense that it makes it close if you consider both. And he's actually playing a little bit better defense here in the postseason. Game 1, he was a little better. Game 2, he was getting blown by every possession. So
let's take into account, too, how banged up he is right now. He was questionable with about 3 different injuries coming into Game 2. And I think for him to be that injured and still putting up these performances makes it even more impressive from him.
No, definitely. So I think this series probably ends up as a gentleman's sweep. I think Luka Doncic is probably going to have a 45, 50-point game at some point, probably one of the next 2 in Dallas. Who knows? They could maybe push it to 6 if Kyrie decides he's going to play some better basketball. I think the Boston crowd was really in his head. He acted like before the series that really wasn't going to be a factor, but I think it kind of has been a factor. I think the emotions of returning to Boston after a pretty disappointing tenure kind of as that number 1 option for the Boston Celtics.
I will say, when they signed him, they thought Kyrie was going to help them to a championship. He might anyway.
That's true.
So
the Celtics will take it even if it's 5 years after the fact.
Yeah, but I think that about covers it for the NBA Finals for now. Now, let's talk about the Stanley Cup Final. Game 1, being a couple days ago, as the Florida Panthers shut out the Oilers 3-0, despite being outshot 32-18. Sergei Bobrovsky is just a wall right now, and the Florida defense has been locked down, holding Edmonton to 0 for 3 on the power play. They also went 0 for on breakaways, which with the offensive talent of this Oilers team is just so impressive. Then as far as tonight, that was a game that was a 1-1 when we started this recording. And since then, Florida has ballooned that to 4-1 over the Oilers. And it's Evan Rodriguez. This is a glue guy that's been on a bunch of Cup teams recently. He was on the Vegas team last year and just kind of is anonymous a lot of season and then really shows up in the playoffs. He's done it for Florida this year. 2 goals tonight. Again, Aaron Ekblad with a goal as well in this game, and Mikkola as well with a goal. So defenseman and Rodriguez are your goal scorers tonight. The Oilers have put up one courteous of Matthias Ekholm, but the Oilers are not playing well enough as a unit.
Is this series over?
I'll say let's see what happens in Edmonton because the crowd in Edmonton can be such a big difference. But if Edmonton's going to get outshot like they have been tonight, shots are 28-19 currently as we record this. But actually the game is now final. The game has just gone final. Panthers win 4-1 and take a 2-0 lead in this series. So I know I picked the Oilers at the start of this series, but I think you have to win games 3 and 4 in Edmonton to have any chance at all. They're just not playing as a good enough cohesive unit. This Florida team they just feel like a wagon right now.
Florida teams and being wagons. It's the season for that apparently.
Yes. Sergei Bobrovsky, I know I said it already, the dude is just a wall right now, completely impenetrable. To only allow 1 goal on over 50 shots versus this Oilers offensive attack is just absurd. I don't care how good the chances are, that doesn't happen. You don't hold the Edmonton Oilers scoreless or to only 1 goal this long, and Bob and this Panthers defense is just doing it anyway. If they keep up even probably 75% of this defensive performance, I think they win this series, maybe even in 4.
Couldn't agree more.
So, kind of flip the script there with the NBA versus Stanley Cup Finals analysis, so you see which one of us is more plugged into each of those sports respectively. But we will finish it off with a little bit of MLB talk tonight. And how about those Cincinnati Reds who have turned it around after my
Are we getting an
rant?
Are we getting an anti-rant right
We
now?
might be getting an anti-rant. I still don't like David Bell, so you're not getting... I don't care what the team does. I still will not think David Bell can provide success until he brings us to the postseason and we win a series. But this team is being really picked up right now by the play of not just... It's not really even Ellie right now. Ellie's been a bit cold recently, but it's the other guys. Jonathan Indy has gotten hot. Tyler Stevenson. We finally figured out that we can DH Tyler Stevenson, and guess what? He's quite good at it. It's almost like I said he should be doing that all season long, but he's been great when he's DHing. Jonathan Indy has been great. Jacob Hurtubise with his little slap swing, West Point grad, has been really fun. Blake Dunn has been intriguing so far, being called up. Super fast, scored a run in each of his first 4 games, and is great defensively. So this team is really looking up. The offense has finally kind of started to pick up with the pitching, and then Fernando Cruz now leads all of the MLB in strikeouts by a reliever. Yes, that means more than Mason Miller. And the innings numbers are similar. So if that doesn't tell you what a good pitcher he is, the Fernando Cruz splitter might be the best pitch in baseball.
Have the Reds moved him to the closer spot yet, or is that still Diaz?
That is still Cardiac Diaz, but the good thing about Fernando Cruz, I don't love Diaz, but I think Cruz is so valuable as kind of the fireman role. I would feel, as crazy as it sounds, you could have bases loaded, no outs, and stick Fernando Cruz in the game, and I would go, oh, we're going to get out of here not allowing any runs. Because he just is a strikeout machine. You can know the splitter is coming, and you will still swing at it. It is the most devastating pitch in baseball right now. He is just on fire. The Reds took 3 of 4 from the Cubs this past weekend, and now are tied with the Cubs for second in the division. They're also tied for a wild card spot right now, which is just amazing for a team that I thought was absolutely cooked a couple weeks ago to be able to rebound. And it really shows that it's a long season. The Reds have a midweek series. Battle of Ohio is this week, Reds Guardians, and I will actually be there on Wednesday. It is Ellie De La Cruz bobblehead night. That will be on the table next week. We'll go ahead and say that now.
I can bring my Ronald Acuna bobblehead as well.
R.I.P. Acuna.
Many condolences to Acuna, who has had his ACL surgery.
Yeah, and let me tell you, the photos of him after that, bro looked depressed.
I think I would be depressed too if I had another ACL surgery after being the best player in the sport last year.
Yeah, but elsewhere in the MLB, Aaron Judge, just wow. The dude is hitting out of his mind right now. I think you had a stat about Aaron Judge.
Yeah, so Aaron Judge, based on his play this week, has catapulted himself to the top of the career OPS leaderboard among active players. He's inching towards that 1,000 mark, which over a career is just absolutely insane.
Yeah.
It's insane enough in one season to have 1,000, 1,100 OPS, whatever. We see a couple players in college baseball doing that. You hardly ever see that in Major League Baseball, and Judge has been doing it on a consistent basis throughout his career. I talked about last week, I had a mini rant segment, if you will, about how Aaron Judge is cementing a Hall of Fame career, and after another week of baseball, I still feel like he's on that trajectory.
Yeah, he definitely is, and I know the Yankees are going to be without Juan Soto for a little bit, but this lineup is so good right now.
Other than Anthony Rizzo. Rizzo has been very bad.
He's so bad, yeah. But other than that, I think this team is set up really well right now. Orioles are still right there, though, only 2.5 games back. The rest of this division all kind of right there together. Red Sox, Blue Jays,
2 games back. This got to be the sneakiest division race I've ever seen.
The Orioles are just good.
Didn't really consider the Orioles being that close to the Yankees, but Shout out to the Orioles being 21 games above 500. They start a 3-game series with the Braves, so they will be 24 games above 500 after this week.
Which, keep in mind, this Orioles team is doing this without basically half their rotation and without Felix Bautista.
Yeah.
So, great season from the Orioles so far. AL Central, Friendship and Smiles keeps right on plugging away with the Guardians at the top. Hopefully, they will lose 2 more games this week in Great American versus the Reds, especially the Wednesday game.
Hey, you're 2-0 in Great American Ballpark. Let's make it 3-0.
That was versus the Diamondbacks last season. So
I am also 2-0 in Great American Ballpark for the record. We actually,
and so is our good friend Jonathan Moore.
Yeah.
Shout out Jonathan Moore.
And whoever that fan was in front of us that said boom every time the Reds hit a home run.
That guy was Carl.
Carl with a K.
Yes, Carl with a K. Carl with a K is definitely not listening, but if you ever see this somehow, shout out that guy.
Bro was electric.
Yeah, he was.
Had the left field bleachers absolutely booming.
Dude single-handedly started the wave as well. He was
That is true.
Absolute legend.
And he just stood up. He just decided we're gonna start the wave.
Yeah.
And did it successfully.
Absolute legend of a guy. But
and what a 2-day trip to Cincinnati that was.
Yes, that was fun for sure. Then the rest of this AL Central, Royals still kind of hanging around right there. Twins have fallen back. The Tigers, despite the efforts of Tarek Skubal, just keep falling back. And Tarek Skubal, I want to talk about him for a second. This is a guy that I am severely regretting not making my Cy Young pick at the start of the year, because I remember
you were close.
I was talking to you. It was either going to be him or Luis Castillo. And I went with Castillo, and then Tarek Skubal has shoved. He has only allowed 17 earned runs in his last 18 starts. Not innings, starts. That is absurd.
Striking out a lot of guys along the way,
too. He touched 102 the other day as well.
Goodness.
His velo is up. His spin rate is up. This dude is just on a heater right now. And the White Sox are still terrible at the bottom of this division. And have you seen the push to get Martin Maldonado sent to the All-Star game? I saw that, and then I saw people trying to send the campfire milkshake.
Mr. Below the legal
DUI,
alcohol.
Yeah, his batting average would not get a DUI, which is just horrific. Then the AL West, Mariners kind of maintaining this 5-game gap they've had about all season over the Rangers. The Astros comeback has kind of stalled at that 6.5 game mark.
Those pitcher injuries just piling up for the Astros.
Absolutely killing them right now.
Javier going down for the year.
Kyle Tucker
Jose
also
Urquidy,
injured.
I think.
Yeah, Urquidy.
Urquidy, he's injured. He's out for the year.
I know Kyle Tucker's not a pitcher, but he is also injured. That's not good for them. Then A's and Angels in the race to the basement at the bottom, 11 games back. NL East, Phillies are pulling away because the Braves can't hit right now, and I'll let you talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, so the Braves, a few things about the Braves. The Braves have decided that hitting the long ball is the only way. They're going to just stick to their guns. They're not going to try to hit singles. They're not going to try to hit doubles. This team is still trying to hit bombs. I'm not really sure why, because I appreciate the feedback from you guys, by the way, who watched last week and agreed with me that, and you're fans of other teams that agreed with me that the baseballs are dead. I appreciate that I am not the only one who is a conspiracy theorist with the tinfoil hat on. I think the baseballs are dead. I think the Braves need to change their approach. And today is June 10th, 2024, when we are recording this podcast. And I declare to you that the NL East is over. The Philadelphia Phillies are the 2024 National League Eastern Division champions for the first time in several years. I know it's the first time the Braves will not have won it in 6 years. I'm ready to make that declaration. I'm usually a pretty optimistic fan, but the Phillies are on another level this season, 25 games above 500 as we record this podcast right now, 45-20. The Braves losing the Cy Young favorite, losing the NL MVP favorite betting odds-wise in Strider and Acuna.
Both my picks.
Yeah, thanks for that, by the way.
Welcome. Maybe it's good I didn't pick Tarek Skubal. He would have gone down with a torn UCL in game 2.
Yeah, or maybe a ruptured testicle or something. And who really knows what would have happened to Tarek Skubal? But something bad would have happened. The Braves have to trot out a new young arm every 5th day, every
Gator legend Hurston Waldrop.
Every 4th or 5th
Gator
day.
legend Hurston Waldrop.
Waldrop had a pretty good start other than the 3rd inning, gave up 7 runs in the 3rd. The first 2 innings were really good. I didn't get to watch much of that game because it was the same time as the Clemson Florida game too. So I was locked in a little bit more on the game that was in front of me.
Yeah.
But I liked what I saw from Waldrop.
I'm telling you, he's going to be a really good pitcher.
He's going to be good. Made it to the majors in less than 1 season. after, or less than 1 calendar year after being drafted, which is absolutely
by the way,
incredible.
Can we talk about how I know that he was the number 1 overall pick. Paul Skeens getting I don't want to say it's undeserved. It is absolutely deserved publicity from Paul Skeens and his stuff. And by the way,
you mean Livy Dunn's boyfriend?
Yes. I'm willing to give you top 20 pitcher in the MLB right now.
Yes.
For Paul Skeens, because he's made many starts now and it's still at that elite level. I think he's made enough starts.
And the fact that Micah is telling you he is top 20, he's top 10, and Micah is just not comfortable enough to say that yet. But in 3 podcast episodes, Micah will be able to give us top 15. So we'll take what we can get, top 20.
I'm slower to come around on rookies than most people. Even last year with a lot of the Reds rookies, the only guy that I know Ellie Maney was all over the place, but you'll know this from last year. The only guy that I was willing to say will be a good big leader for a long time was Matt McClain last season because of his bat-to-ball skills. It takes me a very long time to come around on pretty much any rookie ever. So to say Skeens is top 20 is very high praise from me. But with all that said, can we talk about how Hurston Waldrop is getting no love at all for making it up to the majors less than a year after being drafted in comparison? I know Skeens definitely deserves the media that he's getting because of how good he is, but for any pitcher, especially a starter, to make it up within a year, regardless of the circumstances, is wildly impressive.
I wouldn't really want to give much attention to the Braves right now anyway. They've been, like, I am not even trying to be funny here. They have been painful to watch over the past 3+ weeks on offense.
I turned on a Braves game the other day, and I could see your pain.
Waldrop definitely deserves some love for sure, but the fact that you just kind of have to close your eyes every time the Braves are up to bat, other than Marcell Ozuna,
which imagine
I think
saying
that contributes
last year.
to it a little bit.
I know that Acuna's down, but still, this lineup without Acuna last year would still have been a very good lineup.
Because Austin Riley was hitting. His OPS was in the 900s. Olson's OPS was in the 900s. Michael Harris' OPS was in the 800s.
The Orlando Arcia fall off has been.
I'm still fine with Arcia in there because he's an elite defensive shortstop and he's cheap.
His hitting is
his hitting is falling off a cliff.
He's looking more and more like Andrelton Simmons every day.
Yeah, but everyone's falling off a cliff. It's not like we have guys waiting in the wings that can hit either. And the Braves farm system is one of the worst in Major League Baseball because we signed all these guys to long-term contracts, and I think this is going to be an exception. More so than a rule for these guys and their careers.
These guys aren't going to stay this cold this long.
And I personally, as a Braves fan, I'm fine with these down years coinciding with the year where we lose Strider and Acuna. I know you can never really throw in the towel in a baseball season.
Also, you don't know when these guys are going to get hot. They might get hot in September and carry you.
But I'm just saying, I'm not necessarily going to be as downtrodden as I would be if we had Strider and Acuna and we were still way underperforming. I think maybe the psychological aspect of that is getting to the Braves a little bit. They lost their best pitcher, their best hitter. That's got to affect your psyche a little bit. The hitters know they all have to pick up the slack that Acuna leaves off, even if he wasn't performing as well this season. Same with the pitchers. The pitchers have performed very well, but I think this is kind of more of a pitcher's league this season, just because of the baseballs being changed, which I'm now willing to say the baseballs have been altered. I don't even think it's a conspiracy anymore because I've talked to several of you who listen and watch this podcast. But last thing about the Braves, I think this is definitely still a wild card team. I think they're going to find their way into the wild card, and I think you never know once you get in Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
You never see the teams you expect to see at the end. So maybe the Braves catch lightning in a bottle. If they don't, I'll be okay with it personally.
Yeah. I definitely could see that happening with the pure talent that's in this lineup. I think if they get hot, they could still be a very hard team to beat. And one thing I do want to ask you about the Braves before we move on here is, if you are Alex Anthopoulos, who doesn't usually like to give out big contracts, what do you do with Max Fried at the end of this season?
Well, okay, if it was me, Max Fried he started off this season a little rough, but I think he's shown that he is the ace of a staff. The Braves are fortunate enough coming into the season to kind of have co-aces with him and Strider. But with the uncertainty around Strider coming back from a second Tommy John surgery, if it's me, and I know this is not how the Braves or Alex Anthopoulos operate, if it's me, I'm handing Max Fried a pen and a blank check, and I'm letting him
write a number,
and I'm locking him up for the rest of his career as an Atlanta Brave. The problem with that is that's not how the Braves operate. It's not how Anthopoulos operates, and I think that Max Fried wants a homecoming to the West Coast. California kid.
Don't go to the Dodgers.
I think he's headed west. I really hope he's not. And if he is, this is a very unfortunate last season for him as an Atlanta Brave as our lineup continues to struggle. But to answer your question, I would definitely do everything in my power to lock him up long term.
Yeah, I agree with that, but as you say, that's not how AA operates,
Right.
so we'll have to see what happens there. Then
It's kind of like Dappa with the transfer portal.
Yeah, it
like,
is.
Anthopoulos just doesn't give these rich contracts. He just doesn't.
No.
He gives some long-term contracts by all means, but you got to have if you're going to sign a long-term deal with the Atlanta Braves, you got to kind of give them that hometown discount. And that's why they've been able to build such a talented roster, even if they're not performing to their capabilities this season.
What you're going to need to do, instead of the Waffle House gift card, you're going to have to give him a Waffle House franchise, and then maybe he'll sign. But a little bit on the NL Central here. I know I mentioned the Reds already, but Brewers still 7-game lead. Then Cubs, Reds, Cardinals, all 7 games back. Pirates 7.5. So
Man, logjam there.
all these teams, too, are right there in the wild card race as well. How about the Pirates still hanging on? I think it's because the National League is mostly down this year. Not a lot of teams over 500 in the National League, but you want to talk about co-aces. I think there are 2 teams in this division with co-aces right now, and they're the Reds and the Pirates.
Jared Jones, Paul Skeens.
Nick Lodolo and Hunter Green for the Reds have both been exceptional, and then Jared Jones, Paul Skeens, and maybe even Mitch Keller, who is kind of hitting his stride.
He's doing good too.
For a team who we all thought their main problem would be starting pitching coming into the season, that has been all but the problem for the Pirates this year, and it's been really impressive. So for Pirates fans' sake, I really hope they don't trade all those guys away.
What do you make of the little situation between O'Neal Cruz and Jared Jones? Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
I'm not familiar with that.
So, I believe O'Neal Cruz either misplayed a pop-up or was fooling around just in a situation where the Pirates were losing by 3 runs, and Jared Jones is like, "Bro, give me the ball," and like had a very mean look on his face and like showed that he was not really trying to play the games that O'Neal Cruz was trying to play at that point. I think there are 2 sides you can look at this. Number one, baseball players should have fun when they're playing baseball, regardless of the score. It's a long season. Have fun if you can. Number 2, I kind of see Jared Jones' side as well. Like, if I'm a starting pitcher and I'm struggling a little bit, my team's down 3 runs, I don't really want to see my shortstop fooling around too much.
Yeah.
But
I
it depends on which way you want to look at it, because that's kind of just who O'Neal Cruz is.
As president of the O'Neal Cruz Haters Club, I side with Jared Jones completely. But
there you have it.
In all seriousness, like you said, I get both sides of that. And O'Neal Cruz, I know I just made the joke about him, but he has been really good this season for the Pirates. I think he's really been a
not better than Ellie,
this lineup. No, not better than Ellie. Ellie is still way better. So this division, I think, is going to be very fun for the entire season, especially with how many of them are in the wild card race. Then Dodgers, I think the NL West,
not so fun division race.
Yeah, is over for sure. Then the Padres are kind of still just messing around there in no man's land. The Giants have recently been decimated by injuries. I think they're done at this point in the year. Diamondbacks, it's clear last year was lightning in a bottle. Jordan Montgomery's been terrible. They cannot get anything going at all. And then we know what the Rockies are. That is kind of it for the divisions. And one last thing here on the MLB, I want to talk about Luis Robert. Do you think I think we're both pretty sure he gets traded, but where do you think he goes? Because the hacker on Buster Olney's Twitter account today said he went to the Phillies, and I didn't know the account had been hacked, and I thought he got traded to the Phillies for a split second. I was like, oh no.
No, so thankfully I kind of monitored that situation all day. I saw that he got hacked, and I was kind of enjoying it a little bit.
The Lindor to the A's cracked me up.
I retweeted both of those just to try to see who I could get. And I don't know for sure if I got anyone, but hopefully I did. And that was elite trolling by the hacker for sure. To just have the awareness in the midst of pushing his fake cryptocurrency that was called Buster, by the way, that he tried to get a lot of people to buy, and which he did so successfully. A lot of people were buying it actually, and then after deleting a few of those, then he just decided to be an elite troll and say that he had the awareness to know that Robert is probably going to be traded pretty soon, and the Phillies would be a fit. So that was really funny for him to say Robert to the Phillies. I don't really know who I would necessarily mock him to in terms of a trade, but I hope it's anyone but the Phillies.
I have an idea. There have been reports that the Cincinnati Reds,
oh gosh,
they're saying that everyone in the farm system is on the block except for Rhett Lauder, including Cam Collier. And I think if you put together Cam Collier, Graham Ashcraft, and a couple lower-level prospects, that's a Luis Robert package, in my opinion.
Who needs Cam Collier when next year you can just draft another Cam and Cam Canarella?
Well, Cam Collier's a third baseman, but I think that I'd never expect the Reds to make moves at the trade deadline ever. I was not surprised last year when all they got was Sam Maul. This is not a team that makes trades, but there's also usually no reports of them being interested. I think the fact that there are reputable reports that the Reds are interested in Luis Robert has really piqued my attention, because you stick him out there in that outfield, I think you would have to move him from center because TJ Friedl is so elite in center, but Luis Robert in that outfield, the Reds don't have a good right-handed bat in the outfield at all. They really don't have a good right-handed bat, period, other than Spencer Steer. And Tyler Stevenson and Jonathan India are kind of getting hot right now, but Luis Robert is so needed for this team right now. And the fact that there are actual reports, I don't want to get my hopes up because the Reds, like I said, never like to make moves like this, but I think this could be the one exception.
I would love that for sure, and it would make a team that in the Cincinnati Reds that, in my opinion, I still kind of view the Reds as just like a really fun team. I don't really take them serious yet in terms of contention. If you add Luis Robert to that lineup,
yeah,
I think my mind might start to be changed.
Which, as a Reds fan, that would be a move that the Castellinis, I don't think many Reds fans have faith in it at all, that they're ever serious about winning. You make that move, you convince an entire fan base you're serious about winning. So,
and then if, at that point, you're getting the kind of fan support that you get every opening day, in my opinion.
Yeah,
maybe not to that level, but that's the first thing that comes to my mind in terms of excitement for the Reds. Like, everyone gets excited every year for opening day in Cincinnati just because that's the thing that they do. It's opening day in Cincinnati has been a thing forever.
And you want to talk about a lineup? If you look at TJ Friedl in the leadoff spot, Ellie in the 2, Jamer Candelario 3, Luis Robert cleanup, Spencer Steer 5. Yeah. That's a very good top 5 of a lineup. So,
and a team that would be ripe for catching lightning in a bottle, which we know is the recipe for success in the current landscape of Major League Baseball.
The Reds have postseason success pitching right now. The starting rotation is great. The bullpen is good enough. It's just, can the lineup be consistent? I think if you add Robert, it does become consistent enough. But like I said, not going to get my hopes up. This is still the Reds. We don't make moves. But I think that is it for baseball this week, and therefore that is it for the pod, unless you have anything else.
No, super fun episode today. Appreciate
a lot of college baseball.
Appreciate y'all getting through the Florida Clemson talk with us. I think Mike and I just needed that extended conversation about that game since we weren't able to watch it together in person or on TV or anything. Super good conversation there. Good luck to your Gators the rest of the way.
Thank you.
I think that just about wraps us up for today.
Yep, so we will see you guys back next week. We'll have a Ellie bobblehead on the table. Hopefully the Reds have beaten the Guardians twice in a row, and we'll see if the Braves can take a couple over the Orioles. But that is it, and we will see y'all next week.